Hello everyone and welcome back. In today's video, I am going to be making a polymer clay goth style wine goblet. And the theme for today's design is night flower. So I will be making some skull roses, some distressed type background textures, and several different goth style design elements. So please watch till the end to see the finished piece, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Let's get started. So we are going to start by wrapping the whole cup in black, and I don't have a pasta machine. I just rolled this out with a rolling pin, and I'm just going to lay it over the cup and then begin wrapping it all the way around. And you don't need to be super close up here on the top rim, but you do want to make sure that clay reaches all the way to the stem on the bottom. And you're just going to wrap that around, kind of pressing it into the glass as you go. And you'll have these little folds on the bottom, and we are just going to smooth those down. If you need to, you can trim off some of that excess clay there and use it to fill in other spaces on the back side. I didn't have a whole lot of black clay to work with. And then I'm just going to smooth out this seam here and clean up the bottom. This is what it looks like. So my seam here is gone, and the bottom part of this down here by the stem looks pretty clean as well. Now we are going to be adding an additional piece down here on the bottom and texturing the surface of the cup as well. So I wouldn't worry too much about imperfections. I don't know how well you can see this, but you can look at the cup from the inside and see any air bubbles that might be in there if you want to take care of those. Now you can set that aside, and we are making some tiny little skull flowers. So I am using 3 different dotting tools. This one is double-ended, and then I've got this one that's very, very small and kind of pointed on the tip, and this is great for use on the noses on these smaller skulls. So generally I would start with a ball, but I want these flat backed, so I am going to point that end there like a face would be, and then I'm just going to press that in. And I'm going to start by marking those eye holes with that smallest tool that I have here. And I'm just pushing those holes in, and then I'm going to come back in with my larger daughters and widen and hollow them out. So using the smaller end, I am just making this nice and circular. And then with the larger one, I am moving in a small circle to widen those holes out for the eye sockets. And you do want to be very careful when you're doing this so that you're not squishing the rest of it. This is what they look like. And now I'm going to come in with this smallest tool that I have here, and I'm going to start by making a dot right here between the eyes. That is the top of the nose. And then coming down, I'm going to do another one on each side. So a skull nose is kind of a heart shape. And again, this tool is perfect for these tiny ones. And I've got my larger dotting tool here, and now I am making a small indentation right there below the eye, just between the eye and the nose. And then I am just going to begin dragging that back and kind of upward towards the eye. And then I'm going to take that dotting tool when I've got a nice hole there, and I am just going to push it straight down on both sides. And I am just kind of smoothing that clay down and out of the way. And then I'm just going to cut those flaps off with my razor knife and then re-smooth the edges. Here it is, and now I'm just going to touch up those eye holes and deepen the holes for the nose. And now I've got my razor knife here, and I am going to use that to mark the holes where his teeth would be. So I'm just making some nice straight lines across the bottom here, and you want them deep enough that they can be seen, but you don't want to cut all the way through. And once I've got those marked, I am just going to trim off that excess so that this is nice and flat on the bottom, just like that. And again, this is going to be a flower center, and I am going to be making 2 of them. So for the petals, I have got this blue color, and I am just going to begin by cutting it into some nice even pieces with my razor knife, and then rolling those into balls. Now to turn these into petals, I've got this foam pad and a daughter here, and both of these came in a kit for flower making. Now before I had this, I used a piece of cloth with tissue paper over the top of it, so the clay won't stick to the tissue paper, and it gives you just enough give underneath to get a nice curved line on there. So I am just going to start by pressing this in, and I'm going to make it skinnier on one side so that I can hold it with my finger. And then I am just going to begin kind of pressing and pulling that outwards, trying to keep it nice and round on the top. This is what it looks like, and you'll only need about 8 to 10 of these. And once you've got your petals made, we are just going to begin placing them on this skull. So you want to place them right up against the edge, making sure that that skull is nice and flat and straight in the center. And I am just overlapping them like a regular rose, and I will be it's a little hard when you start out because there's only a few petals, but once you do a round, you will have a little tail to pinch there on the bottom so that you can hold onto it. So now I've got a little handle here now that I've made that first set, and I am just going to begin adding the rest of these petals. This is what it looks like, and now I'm just going to remove that stem so I have a nice flat back. This is what it looks like, and I am going to be making another slightly smaller one as well. Here are my 2 roses, and next we are going to make a moon to put them around. So I have got this darker gold color, and I have rolled it out kind of thick. And I am using a texture sheet here, so I want this swirly flower. Here it is, and then I've got a larger round cutter here that I'm going to be using to make my moon, and I am just lining this up so that those large outside petals are right up against the edge of it, and the swirly part there is in the middle, and I am just going to cut out this circle. And then using that same circle, I am just going to line it up right here and cut off the inside. So now we have our 2 roses and the moon, and the next thing to make is the leaves, and then we can start assembling these on the cup. So I have just got a nice thin sheet of this, I think this is called green pearl, and I am just going to be cutting my leaf shapes out with a razor knife. And you want to keep these kind of almond shaped, so you don't want any of them too round or too narrow, and you will need several of these in different sizes. So I'm going to try to cut some small, medium, and large size leaves here. So I have cut out about a dozen of these, and now I have got my foam pad again and my dotting tool, and I am just going to be doing basically the same thing, but these have a pointed end. So I am pinching down the one side, and I am moving in a nice straight line from the center. So I'm out on the leaves, but I am keeping that ball starting from the center with every swipe. So here is my first leaf, and you will need a total of 8 of these. So the moon is going to set here, and then we'll have the larger rose and the smaller rose right down here on the bottom. And for the leaves, I am doing a set of 3, a set of 3, and a set of 2. So for those sets of 3, we're going to do a small, medium, and large. And for the set of 2, we'll do a medium and a small. So let's get 3 of them made, and I'll show you guys how to put these together. So I've got 3 leaves here, and I am going to take my poking tool, and I am just running a line right down the center, and then I am just going to pinch that together right here on the end. So I'm using my dotting tool for aid and just pinching those 2 ends together. And then I'm going to start by taking the medium-sized one here, and I am going to place it overlapping the larger one just a little bit and pinch those ends together. And then the small one, I am going to do the same thing. I am just overlapping it slightly on the edge and then pinching it together with the rest of them. Here they are, and again, I'm going to do another set of 3 like this and then a set of 2. Here are my leaves, and now we can begin placing all of these embellishments on our glass. So I am going to start with the moon, and I am just placing that right in the center. And now we can start placing the leaves and roses, and I have everything laid out here. So I am going to start with the roses first, and we want those leaves sticking out from kind of from underneath the roses. So I will be placing and replacing these several times to get those leaves in the right places where they look appropriate. Here it is, and once you're happy with the placing on those leaves, we can begin adding some vines. So I have got a skinny rope of that same green color, and I am just going to start by making a short curled vine. And once that's done, I'm going to make 2 longer ones the same way. And those 2 larger ones we are going to put together. So we're going to face those curls in opposite directions and just pinch them together with those points nice and even on the bottom. And you can see that one of them is longer than the other, and we will be making one more set of 2 like this. So once your vines are ready, I am going to start with the single smaller one, and I have just placed it between those 2 flowers, and I am just fixing up that curl and adhering it to the cup here. And the first set of 2 I am going to place on the bottom here, right between those 2 leaf sets. So I'm just kind of sticking it under there, and these are going to kind of trail outwards. So again, I am just pulling that and fixing that curl and then pressing it in. And you can see that this is much easier to put those curls on before you place your vines. This is what it looks like, and the next set of 2 we are going to put up here on the top. So I am just placing that end right here between these 2 leaves on that upper leaf set, and again just pulling them out and fixing up those curls just like we did on the lower side. So those ones were going downward and these ones are curving upward. This is what it looks like, and you can see when you look at this from the front that those vines line up nice and evenly in the center as well. Next, we have stars. So I have used that same light gold that we did the skull with, and I have got a resin mold here, and these are actually starfish. So they had very rounded edges. I just went through and pointed them with my fingers. And I am going to be putting stitches on one and a screw head on the other. So I have this tiny little strip of black here, and I am going to start by cutting some little sections off of it and pointing both of the ends on those, and then placing them in an X right in the center of that star. And using my razor knife, I am just going to very carefully snip off the ends so that that is a nice even X. And then I am going to take my poking tool and poke some little holes in there so it looks like they are stitched on there. Here it is, and for the other one, I have just got a little ball of silver clay, and I am just going to press that into the middle and then use my razor knife to make a line down the center so it looks like a flathead screw. Here are my two stars, and I am just going to place these kind of randomly on the top of that piece. This is what it looks like, and now we need to do something with the back side of the cup. So I have made this little tag, and I just used some letter stamps. It says Sweet Dreams, and I cut this out of that same gold that we used for the moon. And I am just going to place this right in the center on the back side of the cup here, kind of lining it up between the ends of those vines that we did. And we are going to surround this with some silver steel panels. So I've got this silver color here, and I have just rolled it out, and I textured this using my razor knife because it has some really nice texture on it here. And I have got some square cutters that I'm going to be using, but you can cut these out with your razor knife if you'd rather. I've just got a large one and a small one, and I am going to just cut out some basic shapes here and then trim them down to use for my panels. So you can see that I've got several different sizes here in rectangle and square shapes, and I am going to place these on the piece, moving kind of diagonally to fill in that space between the corners and those vines that we placed on the front. And I am just going to place and replace these until I'm happy with the way that they look. Here are those panels, and you can see that I worked them all the way up to the ends of those vines from the front side. And now I'm going to take my dotting tool, and I am just going to add some small dots all the way around the border of each one of those panels. And after I've got those panels dotted, I have some small balls of this darker gold, and I am just going to be making some kind of random screw heads on all of these panels. So the next thing to add on this is going to be texture, and you can see that my surface here is pretty rough. I've got some bumps and fingerprints and nicks. I have got this stiff paintbrush, and you can use an old toothbrush or something if you don't have one of these, but anything with some stiff bristles, and I am just going to be kind of dabbing this in here to create some nice texture. And I am going to be adding that texture to the entire top of the piece, so all the way down to those vines and those panels, but not below them on the lower side. We're going to do something else with that. Here is that upper texture, and for the lower texture, I have just got a clear plastic drinking straw that I have snipped the end off of, and this end is rounded, the opposite end is pointed, and I am going to be using the pointed end to make some scales. And I'm not scaling the whole thing, I am just going to do little sections here and there throughout the lower part of this piece. This is what it looks like, and again, I just added that scale texture kind of randomly in different places. And now I'm going to take that dotting tool again, and I am just going to be adding some additional texture all the way around the edges of each of these scale sections. So I am just dotting really fine and close together on the edges, and then kind of spreading them out as I move outwards. Here is that lower texture, and I am really happy with the way that this turned out. I think it'll look great once we add some color to it. So the next thing to take care of is the ends, and again, I am adding another piece on the bottom, and for the top, I think I am just going to add some splits and cracks to make it look kind of like aged leather. So I am just going to move all the way around this edging with my razor knife, and I am just placing some random kind of cracks, and then I'm going to come back through up here on the top of them and just trim off a little bit right here at the top so that we have a gap there. So that top edge is done, and I forgot to add the little lines in the center of these scales when I made them. So I am doing that now, and then this piece will be ready for color. This is what those scales look like now, and we are starting with some cobalt blue and violet. And I am using the blue on the scales themselves, and then I am touching the outsides and those center areas with that violet color, kind of blending them together as I go. Here it is, and I am really happy with this texture and color, and for the top I am going to use some bronze, and I am just brushing that on very lightly. So I'm going to brush it along the top edge and then just in places on the bottom, coming off of those panels and that tag in the center, and then just a little bit around the moon and the vines. This is what it looks like, and now I want to add some rhinestones, some little blue rhinestones to the top part of the cup up here where we did the stars. And you can see that I did add a few extra stars over here on the side, and I am just going to be placing these stones kind of randomly. So I used 3 different sizes, and I just put them all over on that top part of the cup. So the last thing to do is this lower part down here on the stem, and I am just using that darker gold, and I have rolled it into a nice long skinny rope and pointed both of the ends, and I am going to start at the top and then just wrap this down, and you want this line to be very straight. It looks funny when it's crooked, so I left that tail kind of poking out there, and I am just going to get this wrapped around, and then I will tuck that tail into the top of it when I'm done. This is what the stem looks like, and this piece is finished. It's ready to go in the oven, and I am going to bake it at 275 for an hour to an hour and a half. Here is the finished piece, and I am super happy with this design. I love the skull roses and the blue rhinestones, and I did add some additional lines on those skulls just before placing them in the oven, and then I painted all of those holes black after they were finished. I'm very happy with the hard transition between those textures and colors, and I love all of those visual elements. I like the way that it's kind of grunge goth style, but it's still very feminine and pretty. That is it for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed making this piece. Thanks so much to everyone for watching, and I will see you guys next week on Wednesday.